What kind of unsettling information, what kind of message from the past, what kind of mail from the underworld came through on October the 7th? Because this was the peak moment where Mercury in Scorpio squared Pluto. And now on October 8th, we get the perfection of this minor grand trine, which is of the nature of Jupiter and also involves Jupiter in Cancer, Lilith in Scorpio, and Venus in Virgo. And as we come off of this Mercury square Pluto, where something has come about from our karmic past, something that needs to be transformed in our lives, within the power dynamics of our lives, and how we exist in our own body and in our own life, there's now an opportunity to integrate and ground this in our Venetian desire body. And as our Venetian desire body has changed through this Virgoan season, we're going to get an opportunity to expand upon and see the possibilities of what our desire body can actually bring us in this lifetime. This is the cosmological narrative for October the 8th. Now, before we dive into it, I'm Michael the Hierophant, I'm a mystic and magi, and I have two quick promotions to talk to you about. And if you don't want to listen to my promotions, click up here and hold to skip this, hold here to fast forward this and skip this spot. So my first promotion real quick is my weekly astrological and spiritual divination workshop, Consciousness, Conjunctions, and Conversations. I hold it every single week at Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and you can go to the link in my bio to sign up for your spot in the class now. There are a limited amount of seats available each week, so please, I encourage you to sign up and come early so you can grab your spot into the class. We go through on Zoom and we go through the prior week's transits as well as the subsequent week's transits, and I teach you how to delineate where spiritual transits are taking place in your spiritual narrative, your cosmological story, so that you can make better sense of the lessons, the highs and the lows that the Creator and the gods put in our lives in order to learn lessons and attune us to a certain frequency that resonates with our incarnate purpose. As we adventure through this dark forest we call life, we don't know where we're going. We don't know how to get to where we want to get to in life. What better map and what better compass, in my opinion, than the stars above to get us where we need to go, which are constantly acting as an internal reflection of our internal landscapes, the turmoils, the joys, the optimisms, the fears, the anxieties, and everything in between. So please, I encourage you to join me in my class, Wednesday at 6:30, again, completely free. You can sign up at the link in my bio. The quick second promotion is that I've gotten a lot of messages over the past few weeks and months if I offer astrological services and readings. And yes, I absolutely do. I was very selective before, but now I'm opening this service up to the general public. I have menus posted on TikTok and Instagram, so you can DM me on either of those apps, or you can email me through the link tree in my bio. I have situational and financial hardship pricing available for everybody, so you will not be excluded from my services if you cannot afford my full rate. However, I do ask, if you can, please pay it, but if not, it's okay. I understand. Let's look at the economy right now. Let's be real. So let's dive back into the cosmological narrative for October the 8th. Now, all things considered, October the 8th is a relatively calm day in the sky. The biggest thing we're going to talk about today is essentially the perfection, and it's really just one element of the minor grand trine's perfection, but the minor grand trine perfection on October 8th. And we're also going to discuss the moon in Taurus exalted in the superior position opposite Mars in Scorpio. Now, with this minor grand trine, we're actually going to break it up into each individual element. A minor grand trine will consist of two sextiles and a harmonious trine that connect all of them into a triangle. And in this minor grand trine, we have three configurations. We have Venus in Virgo in the superior position sextile to Lilith in Scorpio. We have Jupiter in Cancer in the superior sextile position to Venus in Virgo. And then we have Jupiter in Cancer in the superior position trine to Lilith in Scorpio. And then all those together are obviously making a mixed elemental water and earth grand trine. So a minor grand trine in a vacuum, regardless of the planets involved, regardless of the elements involved, it's a harmonious door opening. It's where we are able to take all of the resources of the planets involved with the minor grand trine, kind of mesh them all together and create new opportunities and new possibilities for ourselves. And then given the elements and the planets involved, obviously those doors will be a little bit more specific elementally or per the qualities of the planets involved. Now, in this specific instance, Venus is in Virgo, which is an earth sign. We have Jupiter in Cancer, a nurturing water sign, and we have Lilith in Scorpio, a little bit more of a volatile water sign. However, we have water and earth. So the combination of the elements of water and earth suggests that we are being supported by emotional expansion, emotional transformation, in order to ground in our lives some sort of Venetian desire that has been purified and refined as Venus has been moving through Virgo, because every single time Venus transits around the zodiacal clock and winds its way through Virgo, the prescription of action for Venus becomes to trim away and refine our desire body. That is why Venus is in fall in dignity. Its dignity position in Virgo is in fall because it has a difficulty expressing itself when our desire body is constantly being trimmed away with, well, things could be better. It's hard to be satisfied and content with your desire body when you have this underlying and underpinned feeling that, well, things could be better, things could work more efficiently. I mean, think about that kind of energy in a relationship. If you're on an amazing date, but then that Venus Virgo quality goes, well, the date really would have been better if we got here 10 minutes earlier, or the date really would have been better if I was here with somebody else, or the date really would have been better if I had a little bit more money to spend. Suddenly you're taking away from the moment of experience, and you are suddenly not immersed in the present moment, which is why in dignity speak, Venus is in fall, because it isn't able to express itself accurately in the sign of Virgo. Now, let's talk about the other elements real quick, and if you've been following my channel, some of this will be repetitive speak. However, for those of you that aren't, or if you just need a refresher, here we go. Jupiter has been moving through Cancer, showing us how to nurture and mother ourselves better in the Cancerian area of our chart. In so doing so, Jupiter provides knowledge and experiences in our life that allow us to accrue wisdom that when opportunities to nurture and mother ourselves come about, we can then employ the actions of prescription of what Jupiter has shown us in the Cancerian area of our chart. And Lilith is similar, but obviously Lilith is not like Jupiter in the sense that she is expanding anything. Lilith is more so pointing out things, and then again, specifically right now in the Scorpionic area of our chart, where we are redirecting and potentially misdirecting our power. And that's why Lilith will tend to represent escapisms, addictions. It's the things that we do to negatively or detrimentally respond to those plutonic tower moments in our life. Like when you get scared, how do you respond to that? Do you quiver or do you stand strong? And obviously Lilith is going to show you that, hey, quivering is a misdirected energy. You could use that energy to stand strong or to get out of the way or to do something else. And so Lilith is always, when Lilith is moving through Scorpio, she's showing us a quality of misdirection in our own energy that could be redirected for a better and a sense of like a more raw energy that we can push through and manifest with. So with Lilith in Scorpio and Jupiter in Cancer supporting Venus in Virgo, again, we have this opportunity to transform something in the Scorpionic area of our life, nurture something in the Cancerian area of our life, and those emotions are supporting the optimal outcome of our Venetian desire body, which has been being refined as it's moved through Virgo. And so, in a vacuum, some of these transits, and the one I'm going to focus on specifically is the one that's perfecting, is Jupiter in Cancer in the superior sextile position to Venus in Virgo. Now, again, Venus is in its fall in Virgo. Venus doesn't accurately represent herself. However, a sextile is of the nature of Venus. So Jupiter expanding Venus's desires in Virgo is still going to be for the benefit of our Venetian body. However, in the grand scope of the picture, the minor grand trine is of the nature of Jupiter. And so this is very Jupiterian and Venetian. And we could probably get into a little bit of a disagreement here about whose story is superseding whose, because that's how astrology is. But in this case, I read this as Venus has a narrative and a story while it's been going through Virgo, but that story is supporting Jupiter in Cancer, showing us how to nurture and giving us those moments of experience and wisdom that we can then employ later in life. Now, Jupiter in Cancer in the superior sextile position to Venus in Virgo is, in my opinion, one of those transits that shows up as we are able to see where our Venetian body is taking us, because we have Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion, and we have a planet that's expanding a water nurturing energy. So that expansion is coming through Venus in a way that's expanding and nurturing those Venetian desires. And so this can obviously feel like kind of a warmer transit. It will tend to bring up more nostalgia, more sentimentality. I like to compare Jupiter and Jupiter sextiling Venus with being, and this is like such a specific story, but in a non-monogamous type of situation where you maybe are battling with, oh, do I have enough affection for my multitude of partners or my multiple partners? Jupiter sextiling Venus shows you that you have a lot of love, you have a lot of affection available, and it can stir up levels and feelings of sentimentality and nostalgia in your love, in your desire, in your relationship body, because you suddenly have this overflow and overabundance of love. Now, obviously, this might be stifled a little bit and might not be a great example with Venus being in Virgo because, again, remember, Venus in Virgo is kind of obsessed with what isn't working versus what is working. Venus will be a lot more indicative to focus on what is working in other signs, specifically her own signs of domicile and exaltation, such as, Libra, Taurus, or Pisces. Now, all of this is being complicated by the fact that we have the moon in Taurus in the superior exalted position to Mars in Scorpio at the same time. And so you remember, this minor grand trine is allowing us to integrate something that came up, a lesson, something that we needed to transform in the scorpionic area of our chart that culminated with Mercury in Scorpio squaring Pluto in Aquarius retrograde. So some sort of information came up that involved our communication and our power dynamics within those sets of communication that is now being integrated, allowing us to move forward and through it our Venetian desire body. But it's complicated because the moon in Taurus is exalted, and the moon is our emotional body. It's how we feel. And when the moon is in Taurus, we tend to feel relatively grounded, relatively safe, relatively content. This is why Taurians can kind of get a bad rep for being lazy. They're just kind of content. They're content with the way things are. And that's why the moon is exalted in Taurus. Our emotional body wants to feel good. And where does the moon feel the best? Well, it feels the best in Taurus because it's the most content regardless of the emotional or environmental situations happening around us. However, the opposition with Mars and Scorpio, and remember, an opposition is of the nature of Saturn, so it's a externalized situation coming in towards us and creating an internal tension versus a square, which begins as internal tension and moves outside of us. So the moon in Taurus in the exalted superior position with Mars in Scorpio suggests an external situation where we have a conflict coming about with a need to change something in the scorpionic area of our life. However, we feel kind of emotionally content. And so oppositions require compromise. They are situations that require compromise. They require us to kind of step outside of our comfort zone. And with the moon being in the superior position exalted, it's essentially like we're really going to have to get over our feelings of being okay with where we're at this very moment in lieu of transforming something in our lives that needs to be changed. And since Mars is sharing a presence with Mercury and Scorpio, I would say and put very good money on the fact that whatever Mercury brought up with its connection with Pluto, we have now been driven to make and activate that change within our lives. However, on the 8th, it's going to come in contention with where our emotional body is feeling. Now, I'm going to jump back to the minor grand trine that we were talking about earlier in this video, and I'm going to say that we actually have an upcoming transit, which I'm not going to focus on here, but we have an upcoming transit that suggests that perhaps this integration of our Venetian body, perhaps this exploration of all the love that we have to offer our Venetian desire body, might come with some difficulties. It might come with some hangups. And not only that, we know specifically what kind of hangups. They're going to be childhood wounds. Because on the 9th, Jupiter will perfect its square with Chiron retrograde. And we're not going to dive too much into that here. However, we know and can feel that there's this sudden expansion. And what happens when we suddenly expand? We tend to meet moments of resistance. So we're having this sudden expansion moment that comes through on the 8th through Jupiter and our Venetian bodies, with Lilith allowing us to transform something in the scorpionic area of our life. However, it becomes complicated in full-blown integration mode because that expansive energy that Jupiter offers Venus then is going to create an internal tension with us where we have a childhood wound. Chiron, the culmination of our childhood wounds, of where we hurt the most from our childhood and the things that we brought with us into adulthood, We're going to have a conflict of that expansion with that childhood wound, and we're going to have to deal with and patch up that childhood wound. And I would say that the most optimistic perception of Jupiter in Cancer squaring Chiron retrograde in Aries is the fact that Jupiter in Cancer wants to nurture. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so he wants to nurture and take care of things. And when it comes to childhood wounds, we have Cancer, which is the sign of the home, the sign of the mother. How much more apt you get? Jupiter is providing an opportunity to salve the wound on some sort of childhood wound. However, it won't come without a little bit of tension where we recognize, oh, that's what's hurting me. That's what needs attention. All right, if you enjoy these astrological and spiritual based narratives, I encourage you to check out Consciousness Conjunctions and Conversations, my weekly astrological class. Once again, it's completely free. You can sign up at the link in my bio. If I don't see you in class this week or signing up for my class, I will see you in my DMs for a reading. And if I don't see you in my DMs for a reading, I will see you in tomorrow's video for October the 9th. You all have a wonderful and productive minor grand trine. We're going to continue feeling this for probably the next few days, especially if you're energy sensitive, but look for those doors that open because of Jupiter and Cancer's nurturing opportunity, Lilith and Scorpio's transformative ability to redirect our energy to something better and more impactful. And all of this is being channeled and funneled through our Venetian desire body, which has been being refined over the last month. So if you find that maybe you're desiring and having a sudden expansion of desires that weren't familiar to you a month or two ago, you can attribute that to Venus's transit through Virgo. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you all soon.